Hi, I'm Carolyn J. Scott, 31, and 2 years ago I walked away from the family that treated me like a walking ATM. Now I've built a life without them, and somehow, they still keep trying to drag me back. It was the sticky note that did it. A stupid little square, barely 3 inches wide, that I'd written a non-profit number on and handed to Sam when she showed up at my door like a ghost of a life I thought I'd buried. She left quietly that day. No final blow-up, no tears on the floor, no shouting about betrayal. Just a whispered, "I hope one day we can fix this," and the soft click of the elevator doors closing. That was 6 weeks ago. I thought that would be the end. But then the envelope arrived. It was handwritten. No return address. Just my name and my condo's address in neat block letters I didn't recognize. Dylan found it in our mailbox, tucked between some catalogs and a water bill. He handed it to me like it might explode. I opened it while standing at the kitchen counter. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting. No signature. Just 5 words centered on the page. "You forgot one account, Carolyn." I stared at it for a full minute, the way you stare at a spider too big to squash. Dylan read it over my shoulder and went still. Then he said, "What account?" I didn't know. I didn't forget anything. At least, I thought I didn't. But my stomach sank in that way it only does when your brain starts doing math in the background. 10+ years of payments. Dozens of automatic transfers. Multiple joint logins, insurance add-ons, co-signed loans. I'd closed everything, right? I grabbed my laptop. Dylan watched me as I opened spreadsheets, old email threads, bank apps. I didn't want to say it out loud, but I could feel it creeping in. The panic. The kind that used to live in my chest full-time, like a pet I didn't ask for. I opened the credit monitoring dashboard I'd set up after the identity theft fallout. One alert. New inquiry. A loan application. Denied. In my name. Again. I clicked deeper. Application date. 4 days ago. Requested amount. $18,500. Purpose. Medical expenses. Guarantor. Melissa Scott. I didn't scream. I just stared. Frozen. Like my body needed a second to catch up. Dylan leaned in. "Tell me this is old. Tell me it's a glitch." It wasn't. The timestamp was fresh. And worse, way worse, it had been submitted with a slightly modified email I used back in college. The one I'd forgotten I'd ever used to register a medical credit card. They found it. They used it. And they tried again. I felt something twist in my chest, sharp and cold. This wasn't over. I thought I'd cut every cord. Burned every bridge. But they'd kept a thread, one I hadn't seen. And now they were tugging on it again. This time, though, I wasn't going to sit still and wait for the fallout. This time, I was going to finish it. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a mug of coffee that went cold before I even took a sip. My laptop screen glowed with a spreadsheet of every account I'd ever touched in my family's name. Mortgage, utilities, car insurance, tuition, credit lines. 11 years of digital handcuffs. And somewhere in all that chaos, they'd found a loose key. Dylan leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, still in pajama pants. "You think it's your mom?" "I know it's my mom," I said. "Sam wouldn't risk it. She's broke, but she's not stupid. Melissa, though, she's desperate enough to think she can fake her way through one more signature." He sighed. "What do you want to do?" "Stop reacting," I said. "Start documenting." It was the same thing my attorney had told me 2 years ago when the first forged loan came to light. Paper trails win wars. So, I made one. I printed every alert, every email, every timestamp. I called the loan company pretending to be a confused applicant. The rep confirmed exactly what I feared. The contact phone number matched Melissa's cell. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from shock this time. From certainty. This wasn't about money anymore. It was control. She couldn't stand that she didn't own a piece of me. So, she was trying to build one from scraps. By lunch, I had an entire folder ready for my lawyer. Dylan offered to come with me, but I told him to stay. I needed to do this alone. The office smelled faintly of printer ink and burnt coffee. My lawyer, Ben, was a quiet man in his 40s who'd handled the original fraud case like a chess player. When I slid the folder across his desk, he didn't even look surprised. "Your mother again?" he asked, flipping through the pages. "Probably. She's creative when she's cornered." He nodded slowly. "You've been remarkably patient, Carolyn. Most people would have pressed charges the first time." "Yeah," I said. "But she was still my mom then." Ben looked up. And now? I hesitated. Then, now she's just someone using my name. He nodded again, more firmly this time. Then we'll treat her like that. He drafted the documents, cease and desist letters, credit bureau updates, fraud affidavits, while I sat there staring at the framed degrees on his wall, thinking about how strange it felt to criminalize your own parent. Before I left, he said, you know, if she keeps pushing this, there's a path to file for a protective injunction. Financial harassment counts. I didn't answer right away, because in my head, I was back in that kitchen, listening to my mom's voice from years ago. We're family, Carolyn. Family means we help each other. But this wasn't help. This was theft dressed in sentiment. That night, when I got home, Dylan had dinner waiting and 2 glasses of wine poured. You talked to him? He asked. Yeah, it's handled. Legally anyway. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. You know she's not going to stop. I know. I took a sip of wine. So next time, I'm not waiting for her to start something. I'll end it first. What I didn't know was that next time was already on its way on a Friday morning with a knock that sounded far too polite for what was coming. The knock came at 9:12 a.m. on a Friday. I remember the exact time because I just logged into a client's security dashboard and was halfway through explaining a phishing pattern to my team on Zoom. Dylan had left early for a site visit. The day felt normal, right up until that sound, 3 sharp knocks, followed by silence. I muted the call, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. 2 people. One in a dark blue blazer holding a clipboard. The other, uniformed. Police. For one horrible second, my brain flicked through every possibility: car accident, Dylan hurt, something at work, before I opened the door. Carolyn Scott, the woman in the blazer asked. Yes. She handed me a folded paper and introduced herself as an officer from the Financial Crimes Division. We're here to deliver a notice of investigation, she said evenly. You've been named in connection with a disputed loan application filed under your name earlier this month. I blinked. You mean the one I reported? The uniformed officer checked his notes. This complaint was filed against you, ma'am. It felt like the floor shifted an inch sideways. Against me? Yes. A Melissa Scott claims you withdrew a medical line of credit and then froze access, preventing necessary treatment. She provided documentation, signatures, emails, transaction history. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity hit before the anger. She forged those. Again. The woman didn't react. You'll have an opportunity to provide evidence. We're just notifying you that the case is open. She handed me a packet thick enough to stop a small bullet, nodded politely, and left. I stood there with the papers in my hand, staring at the space where they'd been, my pulse thundering in my ears. Within an hour, Ben was on the phone. I told him everything, my voice shaking. He was calm, professional, surgical. They're bluffing, he said. She's using a complaint to pressure you into dropping the fraud report. Classic reversal tactic. We'll dismantle it piece by piece. Still, it rattled me. Not because I thought she'd win, but because it proved how far she was willing to go. That weekend, Dylan and I sat on the balcony. He was quiet for a long time before saying, you know, when people like your mom lose control, they don't stop at breaking rules. They start rewriting them. He was right. By Monday morning, Ben had already filed a counterclaim backed by every document, every timestamp, every forged signature. He even included the anonymous letter. The case was flipped before it even began. And then, something unexpected happened. The bank's fraud division called me directly. Their lead investigator wanted to meet, in person. He said, we think this isn't an isolated event, Miss Scott. We believe your mother's been running a pattern. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my stolen money anymore. It was about years of quiet deceit, loans, cosigns, credit lines, maybe even in other people's names. My mother hadn't just been living off me. She'd built a whole invisible empire out of the identities of everyone she'd ever called family. And now, it was all collapsing. The meeting was in a glass-walled conference room at the bank's fraud division. Everything about it was sterile, the light, the air, the silence between questions. A man named Alex ran the investigation. He looked like the kind of person who'd forgotten how to blink, calm, methodical, impossible to read. He started with the basics. Confirm your name, your address, your date of birth. Then he turned a file toward me, thick, tabbed, organized with quiet malice. MS. Scott, he said, how well do you know these individuals? He slid 3 photos across the table. The first was my mother, Melissa, standing in front of what used to be their house before it was foreclosed. She looked smaller than I remembered. The second was Frank, expressionless, wearing a baseball cap I'd once bought him for Father's Day. And the third, Sam. I frowned. What does my sister have to do with this? Alex tapped the stack of papers. That's what we're trying to determine. We have evidence suggesting multiple linked accounts opened under variations of your family's names, cross-referenced addresses, shared contact information, and, notably, repeated use of your personal identifiers. He paused. The earliest record dates back 8 years. My throat went dry. 8 years? I only found out 2 years ago. He nodded. We believe this may have started long before the loan incident. Someone was applying for credit under your name, then shifting balances across new accounts. When you began sending them regular payments, it masked the trail. It hit like a slow-moving explosion. Every emergency they'd ever had, sudden medical bills, fake car repairs, late taxes, it all connected. Melissa hadn't just been asking for help. She'd been laundering her own mistakes through me. I asked, what happens now? Alex's voice was even. We're preparing to file multiple fraud counts. Your cooperation will be critical. Are you willing to testify if it comes to that? For a moment, I couldn't speak. Testify. Against my own mother and father. Against Sam, maybe. Dylan was waiting in the car when I came out. When I told him, he said only one thing: you don't owe them your silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the condo barefoot, the way I used to pace as a kid when I couldn't turn my brain off. Only this time, it wasn't guilt keeping me awake, it was clarity. They'd spent years calling me reliable, dependable, the rock. And they were right. I was steady. Steady enough to hold up an entire house built on lies. Until I wasn't. 3 weeks later, the bank filed formal charges. Fraud. Forgery. Identity theft. And the first name listed on the complaint? Melissa Scott. The second? Frank Scott. The third was redacted for ongoing investigation. But I didn't need to guess who it was. I found out about the arrests the same way everyone else did, through a breaking local news alert that popped up while I was on a work call. Suburban couple arrested in ongoing identity fraud case, over $140,000 in illegally obtained credit tied to family member. I didn't click the article at first. I just stared at the headline while my team discussed firewall breaches, the words floating past like static. Then Dylan texted me a screenshot of the same headline with just one word beneath it. Finally. I waited until my call ended before reading the details. Melissa and Frank had been arrested early that morning, taken into custody at their rental duplex on the east side of town. Officers executed a warrant that uncovered years of financial documentation, fake signatures, multiple credit applications, even a burner email that matched the one used for that latest fake loan in my name. And the best part? The article said authorities were investigating a third party, suspected of coordinating some of the newer applications and covering the digital trail. They didn't name her. But they didn't need to. I stared at Sam's photo in my phone contacts. Not because I wanted to call her, but because part of me still couldn't believe how far it had all gone. Melissa and Frank were out on bail within 48 hours. A neighbor posted a blurry photo of them returning home, Melissa hiding her face, Frank flipping off the camera. That same day, my attorney got an email from Sam. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't denial. It was a deal. If I agreed not to testify against her, she'd testify against them. She'd provide documentation, email threads, proof of who orchestrated what. In return, she wanted full immunity and a clean slate. I read the email 3 times. Dylan was standing behind me when I finally shut the laptop. She really thinks you'll save her, he said. Because I always have, I replied. But this wasn't years ago. This wasn't another emotional hostage situation disguised as a family emergency. I forwarded the email to Ben without comment. 2 weeks later, Sam was arrested. Her mugshot hit local media. She looked exactly like she had on my doorstep months before, tired, shaken, and no longer untouchable. I didn't rejoice. I didn't post about it. I didn't even tell anyone at work. What I did do was go to the courtroom the day they were all arraigned. I sat quietly in the back row, dressed in gray, nearly invisible. Melissa walked in first. Her eyes scanned the room and passed right over me. Frank followed, grumbling to his lawyer. Then Sam, wrists cuffed, lips pressed into a straight line. The judge read out the charges. Words like intent to defraud, malicious misrepresentation, unauthorized use of personal data. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of Melissa quietly crying into her sleeve. When the judge asked if anyone was present on behalf of the victim, I stood. Every eye turned to me. I didn't give a speech. I didn't cry. I just said one sentence. I'm here, and I want this on the record. Then I sat back down. No one looked at me again after that. But they knew. They knew I wasn't invisible anymore. The trial didn't happen quickly. These things never do. It dragged through hearings, discovery, witness prep, and a swirl of motions from defense attorneys who suddenly had to justify a decade of fraud without using the word family as a legal defense. In the meantime, I lived. Fully. Quietly. Finally. I took on new clients, started mentoring junior women in cybersecurity, and hosted my first dinner party with real cloth napkins. Dylan and I spent weekends doing nothing, reading on the balcony, reorganizing our bookshelves, walking to the farmer's market just because we could. My blood pressure stayed steady. My sleep stayed deep. I didn't even flinch when my phone buzzed anymore. About 9 months after the arraignment, the DA offered Sam a deal. Plead guilty to a reduced charge, testify truthfully, serve 6 months with probation and community service. In exchange, they'd waive the heavier felony counts and recommend leniency. She took it. She testified. Against both of them. She confirmed that Melissa orchestrated the original forgery, that Frank had full knowledge of the accounts, and that they'd all benefited. Her own involvement, she claimed, started as just helping with logins and transfers. But eventually, she admitted, she knew exactly what she was doing. Melissa and Frank refused to take any deal. They thought a jury would sympathize. They were wrong. The verdict came in mid-March, guilty. On all counts. The sentencing was swift. Frank got 2 years, suspended down to 18 months, with mandatory restitution. Melissa got 3 years, reduced to 2.5 with the same. Sam walked out of jail 6 months later with a public record and a resume she couldn't use anymore. I never attended the sentencing. I didn't need to. I'd already said what I needed to say in the courtroom that day. Instead, I spent that morning painting. A big canvas. Abstract. No plan. Just color, shape, motion. When I stepped back, Dylan was behind me, arms folded, smiling. Looks like a storm that already passed, he said. It did. A few weeks later, I got a letter from Melissa. Handwritten. The handwriting was still perfect, same careful loops, same slanted signature. It started like an apology and ended like a eulogy. No ask. No threats. Just 5 final words at the bottom of the page. I hope you're happy now. I didn't respond. But I am. I'm happy. Not in the Instagram capsule wardrobe perfect couple way. Not in the everything's fixed way. I'm happy because I'm free. Because my money is mine. Because my name is mine. Because my time is mine. Because when people say you can't choose your family, they're wrong. I didn't choose the one I was born into. But I did choose to walk away. And that choice saved my life. Sometimes love looks like loyalty. And sometimes it looks like leaving.